world is full of fascinating, curious, beautiful creatures that keep our planet diverse and healthy. But these species are disappearing at an alarming rate in the wild. National Geographic and photographer Joel Sartori are building an ark, photographing every species in captivity, including those at risk of extinction. And with your help, we can take action to save some of the charming, fierce, wonderful creatures, one photo at a time. See what we can save together.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings from National Geographic Learning. I'm so excited to welcome everyone to our second annual Back to School series. It's so great seeing so many familiar names as I see many educators joining across the GCC region and also across other regions. It's just great to be back at the beginning of the academic year and great to welcome you to our second annual professional development series. Our theme for this year is to prepare, motivate, inspire teachers, equipping students to tackle real-world challenges. This is our theme, and we look forward to engaging you for the next 4 weeks. Hopefully, you'll be joining us as we introduce topics such as critical thinking skills, which my co-host will be doing today, looking at integrating SDGs into the curriculum, also project-based learning, as well as empowering your students to become change agents of the 21st century world. So we're so happy to have you here with us. But I just want to go over a few housekeeping items just to remind you that we are joining through the Zoom webinar platform, which means that all participants have been muted so that we can engage together and all teachers can be a part of this discussion. But however, we do want you to engage with us. So just remember that you have the chat features. You can also ask questions directly through the Q&A button. So please use those features to engage with our host today, because she will be providing just some great and exciting information to really help to build your toolbox for this academic year. We will be meeting for about 60 minutes today with a Q&A at the end, but please try to join us for the whole session today. Remember that all participants will also receive a National Geographic Learning Certificate for joining us for today's session and throughout the series. So let's get started. I'm really excited to be here, but more importantly, I'm excited to introduce you to my colleague and our guest speaker for this full webinar series throughout the month, Princess Lacewell. Princess Lacewell is our National Geographic Engagement Educational Consultant working across the GCC region. She has a master's degree in curriculum and instruction with a focus on secondary literacy. And she's been an educator, so she's been in your shoes and a school leader for over 2 years in public and private schools across the United States and internationally. In addition, she has an expertise in curriculum design, professional development, and integration of English language and academic literacy across all the content areas, which she'll be sharing some of her expertise with you throughout the next 4 weeks. Please welcome me and welcoming Miss Princess Lacewell, who will be our speaker for the webinar series. Hi, Princess, how are you today?
Hi, Davina. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for that great introduction. And hello to everyone. I'm super excited to be with you all today. I'm talking about critical thinking skills. And as Davina said, we have a great series. So I encourage you to join for all of the sessions throughout the month of September as we prepare, motivate, and inspire educators so that they have tools to equip students to tackle real-world challenges. So today we are talking about developing critical thinking skills to make an impact on the world. And we have a few objectives for our time together. So participants will develop a deeper understanding of critical thinking skills and their impact on student outcomes, explore strategies to develop critical thinking skills that can be used in classrooms, and be able to implement one or more instructional strategies that support the development of critical thinking skills. All right, so to start, I have a question and I would like for you to fill in the blank. In the 21st century, why do I need a teacher when I've got? We are going to do what's called a waterfall chat. Okay, what that means is I want you to type in your response in the chat without hitting enter. Okay, I'm going to tell you when to hit enter all at the same time, and we'll see the responses cascade in the chat like a waterfall. All right, so go ahead and type your answer, filling in the blank. In the 21st century, why do I need a teacher when I've got? Take about 30 seconds or so and put your responses in the chat, but do not hit enter. Okay, give you about 10 more seconds. Remember, we are not hitting enter. There's always a few. Okay, now go ahead and hit enter. Okay, now I'm seeing those responses cascade in the chat like a waterfall. Yep, I'm seeing things like apps, everything's online, Chat GPT, absolutely, YouTube. Absolutely, those are all great responses. And when I was thinking about this, I had the same exact idea in my head as well. So my blank, which some of you said, Google, right? Students can Google and pretty much everything they want to know is accessible to them. But is all of that information true, right? They have access to all of this information, but are they able to navigate that information in a way to ensure they are getting what they need? And that's what we want to tackle today. So when it comes to 21st century skills, I'm sure this is nothing new to you as educators, but these are the special skills and abilities that children need to develop so that they can tackle the challenges of work and of life in general in the 21st century. And so this framework consists of these two parts here. So the top part, we have the outcomes, right? Things like life and career skills, the 4 C's, right? Those are the outcomes. And at the bottom, we have the critical systems that are necessary to ensure that our students master 21st century skills, things like curriculum and instruction, professional development, which we're doing today, as well as learning environments, which we will talk about throughout this series. All right, so we have a Menti that I want to look at here quickly. So if you have a device, like a mobile, you can scan this QR code. If you can also tap on the link. My co-host should put the link in the chat. So you can click on the link in the chat again or scan the QR code and tell me, what do you think of when it comes to critical thinking? What is your definition of critical thinking? Let's take a few minutes. We are not doing this in the chat. We're going to do this in a Menti. I'm going to exit out of here and pull up the Menti. Okay. What is critical thinking? We have the link in the chat.
Yes, the link is in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Okay, just give you a few more minutes here. Okay. Just waiting for the responses. Looks like they're coming in now. Very nice. Okay, good. Very nice. Relating concepts, higher order thinking, absolutely. Thinking outside the box. Having questions, multiple responses. I really like that. Effectively analyze information, inform judgments. Good. When students are encouraged to think and criticize. Thinking outside the box, absolutely. Very nice. Okay. If yours hasn't showed up on the screen, continue posting. I will share the results on a Padlet that I'm going to give you at the end with a bunch of resources. So thank you for that. All right, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so some definitions that I kind of came up with when I was thinking about critical thinking. Thinking that is clear, logical, open-minded, and based on evidence. Ability to think clearly about what to do, say, or believe. And thinking about an idea in a way that helps to understand, analyze, or judge it so that effective action can be taken. And I think that incorporates a lot of what we said in the Menti. So it's more than just being curious about the world in which we live in. It's about making those connections between logical ideas and seeing the bigger picture. Building critical thinking skills means being able to advocate ideas, opinions, and present them in a logical fashion and make decisions for improvement, which is what we want from our students. All right, so let's talk about what critical thinking allows us to do and allows our students to do. They can do things like predict, solve, classify, categorize, analyze, diagram, criticize, simplify. A lot of the things that we were saying in that Menti: associate, illustrate, justify, convince, argue, support, defend, judge. If you look at these verbs, these are things that we often ask our students to do in our typical classroom assignments, right? So we're already asking this of our students. We just need to make sure that we are also cultivating an environment where they can develop this skill so that when we do ask them to do things like this, it's second nature. So when we talk about Bloom's taxonomy and kind of break down, I think somebody mentioned in the Menti, higher and lower order thinking questions. I'm sure we're all familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. But if you look here at the lower order questions, that's your basic comprehension, things like apply, understand, remember. Critical thinking is right there, once you get toward the middle and then towards the top. When you start to apply, analyze, and evaluate, that's when the critical thinking starts to happen. And then that top level, that's your creative thinking, okay? So critical thinking skills, these set of skills, they're part of skills that students use when they are learning, and they are complementary to and not separate from the other learning skills. So everything kind of works together. Let's talk about why critical thinking is so important. So critical thinking is very important because it helps students solve problems. Critical thinking helps students analyze issues, identify solutions, and make informed decisions. Again, something that we want from our students. Additionally, it allows them to make informed judgments. It allows them to evaluate information, distinguishing between credible and unreliable sources. I think that also came up in the mentee. It enhances learning, right? Critical thinking fosters a deeper understanding of subjects and encourages active engagement with material. So when students are exercising those muscles, they're more engaged in what's going on. It also fosters creativity. It encourages students to think creatively, finding innovative solutions to complex problems. Again, something we want from our students. Additionally, it builds communication skills. So critical thinkers can articulate their ideas effectively. They can engage in constructive debates. It also helps with career advancement. So employers value critical thinking because they see it as a person with critical thinking skills is going to be a better problem solver. They're going to be a better decision maker. And those things are very important in the workplace. And then it also is really great for lifelong learning. So critical thinking skills, these are transferable skills. So they aid in lifelong learning and adapting to new situations and acquiring new knowledge. Okay, so they're able to apply critical thinking skills in various situations. Let's look at the workplace a little bit more. So this figure here shows the skill groups which employees see as rising in prominence as we lead up to 2025. Okay, so this came from the Future of Jobs survey of the World Economic Forum. So as you can see here, things like critical thinking skills, problem solving, analyzing, right at the top, where it's been for a while. So critical thinking skills consistently at the top of things that employers are saying that they want from their employees. Additionally, we look at specific skills, the top 15, critical thinking is also up there, okay? Analytical thinking as well, which I feel like they go hand in hand, very much related. Complex problem solving, again, requires critical thinking skills. So critical thinking skills is at the top of the things, again, that employers are saying they want from their employees. Additionally, where you can say, well, a lot of my students, they're probably going to be entrepreneurs and things like that. Also great. But they still need critical thinking skills because they're going to be in positions to make important decisions. So they need that decision-making ability. They're going to have to hire people, so they need to make informed judgments. So whether they are working for someone or they're an entrepreneur, they're still going to need those critical thinking skills on a day-to-day basis. All right, so we're going to do another waterfall chat here. When it comes to developing thinking skills in students, what are some strategies that you use currently to promote the development of critical thinking in your students, in your classrooms? Okay, again, we're going to do this as a waterfall, so just type in your response in the chat, but do not hit enter. Okay, I will tell you when to hit enter, and then we'll see all of the responses cascade in the chat like a waterfall. Okay, so take about 2 minutes or so and type your responses in the chat without hitting enter. It's okay. We're not going to hit enter just yet. Take about 30 more seconds. It happens every time, no problem. Okay, I am going to say critical thinker and then hit enter. So, critical thinker. Oh, nice. Love it. These are great. Higher level questioning, open-ended questions, concept checking questions, mind maps, group work. These are really great. And what we'll do is we'll take all of these and we'll add them to the Padlet that we're going to share at the end, so we can all get some tips from each other. How and why, keywords. Absolutely. Very nice. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through some tips, some strategies, some things that you could do in your classroom to promote critical thinking skills. Now, I could talk about critical thinking skills for hours on hours. Obviously, we don't have that much time. So I'm not going to be able to do a deep dive, but hopefully you'll get some strategies, some tips that you can absolutely use in your classrooms. So I think somebody mentioned this, questioning and inquiry. Absolutely. That is a great way to develop critical thinking skills. So asking the right questions, right? Not just those lower order thinking questions, but getting to different levels. Encouraging students to ask questions as well, okay, about what they're studying. Have them interrogate what they're studying. Teach them to ask open-ended questions that require analysis and synthesis, so important, and then promote that curiosity and that thirst for knowledge. So here is just a little, I guess, like cheat sheet that you could use to ask your students some constructive response questions. So you can see here on the left, you've got lower order at the top, higher order at the bottom, and then you also have at the very bottom that same thing. So based on where you are, you can see how much challenge you are giving to your students. So at that bottom right would be kind of the highest, that how might question. But again, just some question starts that you can use with your students. Here's another example of some question starters that you can use. And again, I will post all of this on the Padlet that I'll share with resources. Here's some other question starters that could be used in different subjects. Okay. What theory applies to? How is this similar to? Okay. What led to? Again, asking the right questions to really challenge your students. Additionally, though, when we are asking these types of questions to our students, sometimes they struggle. A lot of our students in this region are English language learners, so they might not have the language or the confidence to answer those questions. We can also help them out by providing discussion frames that they could use to support and help them with that confidence as they give their responses. Okay, so I encourage you to use discussion frames with your students, especially if they're English language learners. Additionally, when it comes to inquiry, exploration is so important. That discovery learning, giving the students an opportunity to construct their own meaning and find things out for themselves. Here are just a few examples of an exploration that could be done in math, where students work with the partner. They start identifying ratios and things like that in the recipe before they even dive into the lesson and really explore the relationship of ratios, okay? I feel like when students start to explore and discover themselves, deep learning happens. Additionally, as we're talking, about inquiry in science, the 5E instructional model, tremendous model to use with students to, again, promote that inquiry and curiosity, engage. at the top, pique their interests, get them to explore, again, discover things for themselves, construct their own meaning, start to explain, and then elaborate, and then finally that evaluation, okay? Because we still want to make sure that our students understood what they were supposed to. As we continue to talk about inquiry, big questions, okay? Questions that have no fixed answer that you refer to throughout a unit. Again, that's going to encourage students to really think in complex ways. So another example, here's just a simple quote: "The world is our family and our family is our responsibility." And having a discussion around that quote. Do you agree with this? Why or why not? Before we go into a unit where we're talking about global citizenship, okay, you can have a rich discussion about that before we even start the unit. They're already thinking about it. They're already excited about the unit, and then constantly refer to it, see if their minds change, use things. I think somebody mentioned mind maps. Okay, so as they start to explore the essential question of this unit, how can we become citizens of the world? Use things like mind maps, discussion frames to help them get their ideas out confidently. Another thing that we could do, feedback and assessment. So important. So providing constructive feedback to our students about their reasoning, about their problem-solving skills, assessing critical thinking skills through projects, quizzes, assignments, and things like that, but then also using rubrics that specifically address the critical thinking criteria, okay? So this is a critical thinking rubric that I have posted on the resources that, again, I will share, but this is a fantastic way. So you can take things from this rubric to put in your performance tasks or other type of task that you're doing with students that require rubrics to specifically address critical thinking. And then take it a step further, you can provide that constructive feedback on their critical thinking skills. Rubrics are a fantastic way. Okay, let's look at some more. Projects, another great way. So this is an example of a STEM project that can be done in the science classroom, but again, can be changed or modified a bit for different subjects. So this might work in like a design class or something like that. But yeah, so STEM project where they have some challenge, we have to create something that really challenges them to think outside the box. Performance task, another great way, giving them the opportunity to do something, again, related to the real world, applying the content skills that they've learned and thinking in more complex ways. And your performance tasks are also going to be graded traditionally with rubrics, and you can tie in that critical thinking component in the rubric. And then another great way is diverse perspectives, okay? So making sure that students aren't only hearing one voice, right? Allowing them to hear from different people who have different beliefs, really challenge what they're thinking and allow them to be a more globally competent individual. So encourage discussions that include diverse perspectives and opinions, and then teach students to consider differing viewpoints. So before forming their own conclusions, take into consideration other viewpoints, and then exploring the role of empathy and understanding when it comes to different perspectives. Because we're not always going to agree, but it's important that we are respectful. And again, we want our students to be respectful of other cultures while also valuing their own. And presenting diverse perspectives is a great way to do that. Okay, so here is an example of sharing perspectives. So asking a question in class about if they agree after a reading. And again, providing those discussion frames for our LL students. And then giving them in their readings, having them read about different cultures other than their own is also very, very helpful and impactful. And then another piece is real world application, okay? Oftentimes our students are asking us, why is this important? Why is this relevant? When they see those connections, engagement increases, motivation increases, as well as their critical thinking skills. So connecting the classroom learning to current events, real world situations is another way. And showing students how they can use critical thinking every day is a great way to promote critical thinking skills in your students. So here's some examples of real world application in math. Okay, applying their content knowledge to something they could do in the real world, digging in-ground basketball posts, looking at nutritional information. Here's an example in science, okay, where they have the opportunity to go out and do real research that they can then share with actual scientists and be involved in that scientist's work, that scientist's research. Okay, things like explorers. We have, oftentimes we highlight explorers and what they're doing in the field. Okay, so having students follow what they're doing and seeing that even though I'm learning about history or I'm learning about, something in science, there are real people in the field doing real work that's very much related to what I am learning about in school. It helps them to see the importance of what they're learning, and again, promotes that curiosity. And then another piece is critical reading and analysis. I think somebody mentioned this before, like evaluating their sources and checking their bias is another great way to develop critical thinking skills, because again, everybody's not going to agree, but oftentimes we are subject to confirmation bias, and we believe if something sounds like what we're used to, we're going to kind of go with that or believe that. But we have to challenge our students to be critical of what they're looking at, because they have access to so much information. But is it all valid? Is it all good, solid information? So teaching students to critically evaluate sources of information is another way to develop critical thinking, as well as emphasizing the importance of identifying bias, as I mentioned, credibility, and relevance in texts. And another thing is to have them summarize and analyze readings to develop comprehension and critical thinking skills. So a great way to do this is source evaluation. There's a lot of different models out, and I put some on the Padlet that I will share again, but things like the OPVL test, where they interrogate the information that they're looking at. A CRAP test is another source evaluation test that can be used. When it comes to source evaluation, I do want to challenge one thing. Oftentimes, this is thought to be the responsibility of the English department. Oh, the English teachers, they do that. But it's not. It's everybody's responsibility. They do projects in math, projects in science, and oftentimes they're having to do some sort of research. So I encourage you as a system to use that same model. So talk to your English teachers, your social studies teachers, find out what they're using to evaluate sources. And I encourage math teachers, science teachers, design teachers to use that same system so that students get used to seeing that. They get used to doing that over and over, and then it becomes second nature, because like I said, that's what we want from our students. Okay, we don't want to always have to be pulling it out of them. We want them to always do this on their own. When they see some information, we want them to critically look at it and interrogate it and see, is this information good, solid information, or should I challenge it? Additionally, when it comes to comprehension, this is just a quick little organizer that could be used, a great way for students to really get that deep comprehension. So it allows them to summarize as they read, to kind of stop at little checkpoints, to really process the information as they continue. So again, critical reading and analysis, great way to promote critical thinking. And then some general tips. The why chain. So ask why 5 times and then see where you end up. Okay, you can do that after reading. So there's this little reading here about a pump. So they can ask the question 5 times and then see what happens. Do things change? Do they have a solid answer? Where do they end up after 5 whys? Another strategy, kind of general one, if not, then what? So change one thing, and what would that do, right? So if you are, I don't know, like a math teacher, change something in a problem, like a story problem, and what does that do to the solution? This example here, this story, it's about a tank holding a supply of water for everyone in the community. They change something about this tank with the water supply. What happens to that community? Okay, change one thing. I've seen teachers sometimes intentionally like make a mistake when they're doing a problem, to encourage students to challenge them and say, no, we need to change that. So have students always be thinking about what happens when you change something. If you are teaching little ones, you can do something very similar called Magic Wand and Why. So again, same sort of thing, but more kind of fun and playful for the little ones. So again, I have my magic wand. I'm going to wave it, change this. Why? What now happens? Okay. So I want you to look at this cartoon here. And what does this cartoon mean to you? Okay, I expect you all to be independent, innovative, critical thinkers who will do exactly as I say. We're going to do this on the Menti again. So my co-host will post the Menti link again in the chat. You can scan the QR code, and I am just going to quickly change the Menti slide so that you can answer the question. Give me a second. Let me share these results. What does this cartoon mean to you? Lecturer, contradictory, teacher-centered, Harry Potter teaching, tailored lessons so they fit to moving students from the bottom thinking toward, okay. Traditional teaching, old school, lecturers, right? Yeah, that's not what we want from irony. Absolutely. That's not what we want from our students, right? We don't want them to do, well, it would probably be easier if they did exactly what we say, but we don't want them. We want them to be independent and innovative critical thinkers. So sometimes that means respectfully challenging what the teacher says. The teacher is not the only one holding knowledge, right? So you can have rich debates with students. They may have differing opinions than the teacher. So absolutely, we want to challenge and encourage our students to think outside the box, to be critical thinkers. And that means we can't be lecturers. We can't be old school. We've got to give them room to navigate. And we have to cultivate a classroom experience that brings out that curiosity and that encourages that risk-taking that is often involved when it comes to challenging things, because that's, again, super important for the type of learner that we want, and it promotes critical thinking. All right, great responses. All right, let's stop here. Let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so at the beginning, we asked the question, in the 21st century, why do I need a teacher when I've got, and we said things like ChatGPT, we said things like Google, we said things like the internet. And now I want to flip this question a little bit. In the 21st century, I need a teacher more than ever as a result of Google, because our students have so much access to all of this information. It's crucial for us as educators to help them navigate all of this information, and they're going to need those critical thinking skills in order to do that. Okay, so we can't just kind of sit back and say, oh, you know, ChatGPT is here, they have everything they need. No, there's too much out there. We have to give them the tools so that they can effectively navigate everything that they do have access to. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned before, we're going to have Q&A here in a second, but I have created a Padlet for this session. My colleague will post the link in the chat. On the Padlet, you will find some resources. We will have Q&A here in a second, but if there's anything that I can't answer right now, I will post it in the Padlet. I will also post the slides in there, so you'll have access to them. And I will also post the recording link in there as well. And you'll also get an email about that. So the Padlet is available to you. There'll be tons of stuff in there that is helpful. Okay, now I'm going to open it up for questions, our last 15 minutes. So are there any questions that anybody wants to ask? And before I start answering questions, I want to say a couple things. I am an English teacher by trade, okay? My expertise is literacy. I will absolutely answer any questions that you have, but if you're asking something very specific about, for example, physics or math, you know, when I'm teaching this particular topic, I struggle with, I may not be able to answer that, but we do have subject matter experts on our team, and I will absolutely get an answer for you if I cannot answer it right now. But ask me all the questions that you have, and I will answer them. So, Davida, do we have any questions?
Thank you so much, Princess. It was very informative. I am watching the Q&A as well as the chat box, and we'll let you know once questions appear. Great engagement as well from all participants. I've been just engaging with some of you through the chat, so continue at the end of the session, and please ask questions or make statements regarding critical thinking and how we best can support our students in the classroom.
Okay, thank you. I see, I'm looking at the Q&A here, and I see question about certificates. Yes, absolutely. Certificates will be provided. Slides will be provided, as well as the recording.
Thank you, Princess. And I put in the chat just regarding the recording, since you just mentioned it, that we will on the Padlet put a link to our website, and that's where you will find all of the recordings and also previous recordings from other webinars that we have held throughout the last few years on such topics as critical thinking and best practices for educators.
Oh, so there's a question here. Would you mind linking critical thinking to metacognition in a very quick way? I don't know if I could do that quickly. That's a really good question. And when it comes to metacognition and that truly thinking about thinking, that is something that we also should promote and do with our students. I'll post some more information about it on the Padlet, but I encourage you to use things like visible thinking strategies and routines to really encourage that metacognition in your classroom, because absolutely it promotes critical thinking as well. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, so someone's asking about strategies. So the strategies that I shared some specific examples for like English, math, science, but a lot of things can be modified, right? If you are a PE teacher or a design teacher, you can absolutely still do a lot of those things. You can still have performance tasks with rubrics. You can still have that connection to real life. So yeah, so even though I mainly talked about kind of the English, math, science, and I threw some social studies examples in there, absolutely applies to all subject areas.
There's another one that came up, Princess, how to encourage students to think critically while they are basically reluctant to learn. That's a good one. So what are some other strategies that we can employ for when students are reluctant to learn?
Yeah, I think that's something that we as an educator need to interrogate. Why? Why are they reluctant to learn? Is it because they lack confidence? They are not, the instruction is not at a level that they can access. So do they require more scaffolding and support? I feel like that question is twofold. If you have a student who is just truly reluctant to learn, I think more engagement type strategies are going to be necessary. So, you know, using materials that are relevant to them, that they really care about. So doing things like interest surveys, getting information about your students will be really, really helpful. But oftentimes students aren't reluctant to learn. It's more so often they're not getting what they need. So I think finding out what's missing. Is it that they need scaffolding and support? Is it that they're not confident? They maybe need some language frames to be able to produce that oral language. But I feel like it's very rare that they're just not, they just don't want to learn. That's very rare. So I feel like you need to ask additional questions first. But thank you for that.
Someone else has asked about a video or maybe a sample of how a class integrates critical thinking and best practices if possible, so that they have some more information. To me, this is more about the strategies and maybe some modeling, not necessarily if we aren't able to provide a video, but some modeling of how to integrate critical thinking and best practices.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned at the start, you know, talking for 45 minutes about critical thinking is not going to be enough. We could do a whole, you know, weekend workshop on critical thinking skills and really doing some interrogating of our lesson planning and some modeling. So I'll put my contact information on the screen here shortly. But that's something that you can reach out to me, and maybe we can do a session on campus where we actually do some modeling and things like that. So this is something that we can absolutely do. Thank you for that.
The next question from Ms. Fatima, for SOD, will it be possible to tailor a specific rubric to access CT and per student's need and the next milestone? So asking how to incorporate the SOT with a specific rubric to access the CT and students' milestones.
Okay. Yes. So I put a sample rubric on the Padlet, but you can absolutely tailor a rubric. I believe that rubric should be task specific always. So you can absolutely take that language and tailor it to fit your specific need. So you can always take a rubric and modify it to your specific task. And again, if that's something that you need assistance with, we can absolutely help with that. So I'll put my contact information. Feel free to reach out if you maybe want a session on something like that. We can absolutely do it. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay. So what I want us to do now, here's my contact information. Like I said, I would post on the chat, or excuse me, I would post on the screen. It's also on the Padlet. So please connect with me if you are interested in learning more about critical thinking skills, or you want something more personalized, you want some actual in-house modeling. Feel free to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to support this journey that you're going on as it relates to critical thinking. Okay, and then the last thing that we have is my colleague will post a link in the chat just to a survey. So if you could just take a few minutes to fill that out, let us know some of the topics that you're interested in, what your thoughts are, what your needs are. We really, really would appreciate that. So again, my colleague will post that in the chat. And it's also on the Padlet. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So at this point, you should have everything that you need. I will keep checking emails. If anything comes up that I didn't cover here, I will add it to the Padlet. So bookmark that link. We'll add it again to the chat here so that you have it. But thank you so much for your engagement. I really appreciate it. Thank you for posting in the chat. Thank you for posting in the Menti. I truly, truly appreciate it. And then also, as we mentioned at the top of the hour, we have 3 more webinars going on throughout the month of September. So please, please come back to the workshops. We would love to have you share the information. It's not letting me.
Thank you, everyone.
There we go. So there's the information. So we have some great topics. Please, if you haven't signed up, I will put in the Padlet at the end the links to sign up for the remaining sessions. And I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Princess, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.